Every time my car runs out of battery, I'm not entirely worried, you know, because I have this device. Um, the only problem is every time I forget, does the red wire goes to red or does it go to black? Plus, which one is a negative cable anyway? Well, my car doesn't have to catch on fire because I have this device and I can figure it out myself. There are so many guides online. You can find advice from experts, people who have a track record of being really good at what they do. But, you can also find information from people who are just pretending to be experts. They are reading AI generated responses. But, wouldn't it be nice if you were that person with knowledge, expertise, someone who has mastered their craft? How do you do that? How do you become a great writer? How do you become a great programmer? Maybe even a great YouTuber? How do you breach that threshold and become an expert? YouTube is great for those one off problems you want to solve immediately, but that single video doesn't turn you into a mechanic. It's not like YouTube doesn't have full on courses that you can follow step by step until you can become really good at whatever you are trying to learn. And they are usually very well made. So watch those and you are set. Except something is telling me that you have already tried that. And somehow, after watching so many quantum computers videos, you still don't know how to build one in your backyard now. Can you? Okay, well, let me cut it short. The answer to the question of how to learn anything is, well, practice. Just practice a lot. Practice like 100 times until you get really good at it. You can end the video here. There's nothing else to add. If you take that advice, you'll be good. You're all set. But then this becomes like any other video, like any other advice, right? So let me elaborate on that practice thing. Okay, let's take writing as an example. Imagine you have this idea in mind and you want to turn it into a story. You know that you're a terrible writer, but you can't even say what you mean really, which is actually a pretty hard thing to do for some reason. So your solution is to get advice on how to write. You ask the expert, you read Strunk and White, and you join a writing Discord server. They all give you some perfectly legitimate advice. Then you finally sit in front of your computer and you see that blank screen with a cursor blinking. And you wonder, which word do I write first? You close that window and go back on YouTube and look for that video about how to write your first word. You binge watch a few more videos just to be sure. But then now you know how to write the first word, but you don't entirely remember the idea. What was I thinking about? This is the problem with collecting advice early on. Like, no amount of advice can help you when all you have is a blank sheet of paper. Okay, now let's rewind. Imagine we took a different route. In the beginning, when you have your brilliant idea, instead of looking for advice on how to write, you just write. Even if it's badly, you don't even know what bad looks like because you're really bad at it. You don't know how to write. It was the morning and I was sad, but I had a funny dream. And then I went to work. And then at work, I noticed I was wearing two different shoes, exactly like in the dream. Oh, wait, the dream was about work. Yeah, it was funny. Now, you don't just stop there. You keep writing. You write every day. You write until the idea is out of your head and into a text file or paper. You don't have to share it with anyone yet because I'm pretty sure it's bad. But now you have material to go through. Personally, when I know I suck at something, I like to do it at least 100 times. We'll talk about why I use 100 exactly later. But now you have this text that you have written. You can read it back and see which part doesn't make sense. Now you can listen to advice. You might read Strunk and White now, and you will learn about omit needless words. When you have a blank sheet and I tell you omit needless words, what are you supposed to do? There are no words to omit. In fact, you might have trouble writing because you will be focused on each word, trying to weigh it in and figure out if it is in fact needless. The difference is now you can read a sentence that you wrote and remove the parts that are redundant, keeping only those that are necessary. I turned and opened my eyes. Her hands were soft, yet strong. She had golden brown hair flowing in a soft breeze that revealed her big hazel eyes. Her skin was blue, not just a hint of blue. It was blue like Brunra, blue like forget-me-not, blue like hyacinth, blue like morning glory, blue like mirabilis. Wait, mirabilis isn't blue? This isn't a video about writing exactly. Practice is something you must do when you are learning. Whether you are learning to program, learning to ride the skateboard, or just want to make music. You can only listen to someone talk about it so much. You can't learn from their experience. Now, why do I say you have to perform a task 100 times? It's not some sort of magical number that unlocks your chakras or something. It's, the same way that Malcolm Gladwell coined the 10,000 hours rule. Nothing happens when you reach 10,000 hours. Instead, something happens in the process. You get 100 opportunities to fail, and each failure becomes a lesson. If you have no experience writing code and somehow manage to write a function that has 100 lines of code, you probably have a few dozen bugs in it. The moment you run it, it will fail. You are forced to look back at it and modify your code and fix one bug at a time until you learn how to do it right. It's a slow, annoying process filled with lessons you can't learn any other way. You can read all about the theory of programming, but you have to miss a couple parentheses to understand how to place them correctly. The more you write code, the more you practice your craft, and the better prepared you are to improve. But when all you do is read the theory and watch someone else build it on YouTube, you aren't learning those lessons. They are the one making mistakes and growing, not you. And this is why AI makes it much more difficult to learn. Yes, in 2026, no video is complete without mentioning AI. Now imagine writing using AI. A large language model generates those first drafts for you. When you write badly, it's because you thought that this was the best way for you to express yourself. The experts helps you understand what you wrote and teaches you a better way to express yourself by rearranging your words, let's say. But with AI, you didn't really write that draft. You didn't get the experience. You didn't make mistakes. You might get advice on how to improve it, but you don't even understand why it was bad in the first place. You never chose those words. This is something I noticed at my job. The engineers who rely entirely on AI doesn't understand the critique of their code because their work is generated by AI. All they can do is tell Claude or Codex to rewrite the code using the advice that was given. Okay, enough with AI. The lesson here is to practice your craft when you have little to no experience. Write that story, write the code, wear your pads and ride that skateboard. Make your terrible YouTube video. Do it every day. Do it frequently. Give yourself the opportunity to meet those failures in this field. Collect mistakes and then turn them into lessons you can use to improve yourself. If you are a beginner, this is the best way to get good at anything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.